ladies and gentlemen, Rabbi Tuly Weiss, and friends of Israel365, I am honored to welcome you to the Melabev headquarters in the Givat Mesuah neighborhood in Jerusalem to the unveiling ceremony in honor of the Israel365 Memory Clinic for Holocaust survivors. Melabev provides specialized care for people experiencing Alzheimer's and dementia in 4 day centers in Jerusalem and Beit Shemesh, and Melabev at home services in many parts of Israel. Dear friends of Israel365, under Rabbi Tuly's leadership, you've assisted the elderly of the Beit Shemesh community throughout the COVID pandemic. And most of all, you initiated a remarkable program for Holocaust survivors. Thanks to your extraordinary friendship and generosity, Holocaust survivors with Alzheimer's and dementia receive home therapies customized to their needs. We've gathered here virtually to dedicate this ceremony to you. We are honored that Knesset member Meirav Cohen, until very recently Minister of Social Equality and in charge of the elderly in Israel, sent special greetings. Meirav Cohen.
Dear Rabbi Tuly Weiss, dear friends of Israel365, dear Melabev family. As the former Minister for Social Equality, I am honored to greet you on behalf of the Holocaust survivors in Israel, a topic dear to my heart. Today, tens of thousands of Holocaust survivors with dementia live in Israel and need our help. Most of us are familiar with a family member or friend with cognitive impairment, but what does dementia mean for a Holocaust survivor? People with dementia very often lose their short-term memory but preserve their long-term memory. For Holocaust survivors, this means they are reliving the Shoah every day. Their personal experiences and losses never leave them. These memories have always been challenging for survivors, but today, with COVID-19 demanding social distancing, isolation is causing additional emotional stress, making the situation worse than ever. As I focus on the needs of the elderly in our country, I am well familiar with Melabev, a non-profit organization, and its programs. I was introduced recently to the Melabev at Home program, a service that offers customized therapeutic services for Holocaust survivors in their homes. Dear Rabbi Weiss and friends of Israel365, your remarkable generosity is enabling an amazing program. Please let me thank you for your incredible work. You are making meaningful difference in the lives of Holocaust survivors and their family caregivers in Israel. Thanks to your help and the unique program you have set up with Melabev, Holocaust survivors can age in place with dignity. As a society, I firmly believe that we have a moral obligation to care for Holocaust survivors. Providing for their basic needs, food and shelter, is important, but is not enough. They deserve a quality of life with emotional relief, therapies, a caring and loving community. As this population ages, they need our support now more than ever. A few days ago, on International Holocaust Remembrance Day, we unified in commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. Today, with your special project support, we focus on the survivors and their desire to live their remaining years in comfort and respect. Thank you for your tremendous assistance. Toda.
Thank you, Meirav Cohen, for your special words. Ms. Cohen has been of tremendous assistance to Melabev, and we know how much she genuinely cares for the elderly and Holocaust survivors in Israel. I would now like to invite Mr. Jeff Kahn, co-chair of the Melabev Board of Directors, to speak on behalf of Melabev.
Thank you, Yael. My name is Jeff Kahn, and I'm the co-chairman of this amazing organization called Melabev. To be honest with you, one of the reasons that I think I was asked to be here with you today is that my English is thought to be better than my distinguished colleague, the co-chairman, Zvulun Orlev, who was a long-time and well-known politician and minister in Israel. Hopefully you'll find my English sufficient, as I am a third generation or more New Yorker living here in Israel now for the past 30 years. Basically, my English should be okay, albeit a bit fast. Indeed, it is an honor to be here with you today, and want to thank you, Rabbi Tuly Weiss, and your amazing folks of Israel365. When I thought about what could I possibly say in a scope of 2 to 3 minutes, plus minus, I decided I wanted to share the thoughts behind what God decided to share with the children of Israel via his prophet Moses in Leviticus 19. That's a very famous line, and I'm sure you all know it, when he said that you shall love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord. Love your neighbor as yourself. A great insight was offered to us by a rabbi that I would like to share with you. And I always found it very, very heartwarming and insightful. Rabbi Avram Yeshua Herschel of the Kopernitz used to say that the commandment to love your fellow or your neighbor does not apply strictly to the saintly or righteous people, not to them only, as it's almost impossible, at least unlikely, not to love them because they're saintly or righteous. Rather, God is commanding us to love even those people that are hard to love, that might not just be right next to us. That is what makes your work at Israel365 so much greater, so much more special, and so much worthy of praise. In that the people you are helping are not your next door neighbor, not the people you encounter day to day or have built relations or affections for. Rather, they're people that you're helping that are living far away across the ocean in the Holy Land. And you should know your help really counts. In our minds at Melabev, you are truly honoring God's request of loving your neighbor as yourself, as you're helping neighbors all the way in the Holy Land. How much more so is your help important for helping Holocaust survivors in their 80s plus who are now suffering from dementia, who are now even further burdened after suffering through the Holocaust to be strangers also to themselves, not only to the ones around them physically, as the disease has caused them to lose their ability to communicate and relate. And the essence of what we say on every Holocaust Remembrance Day, to remember, not to forget, is now taking place even among the people themselves who suffered. So your help is tremendously appreciated. Melabev has, from its very beginnings, was set out to basically help the elderly and dementia-suffering members of our families and the wider community with the utmost care and respect, just as God had commanded us all to do, namely to care for these important members of our community as we would choose ourselves to be looked after and cared for. I unfortunately learned about the greatness of the Melabev team years ago when my beautiful wife and mother to my 4 children developed early onset Alzheimer's at the early age of 44. The loving care and approach that Melabev used for my wife and family is what the organization promises to deliver and is delivering to each every needy member of our community with the support of caring and great souls like you all. We so much appreciate your help. And as the saying goes, every little bit helps. And with heaven's help, a lot of those little bits could add up to a lot of love and care to Holocaust survivors who deserve that the last years of their lives be lived out with full and genuine care and compassion. Thank you, Rabbi Tuly Weiss, and thank you all the members of Israel365 and all the people participating. It is greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. As always, we know that your words come from the bottom of your heart. Melabev's board of directors includes noted professionals in Alzheimer's and dementia care, as well as representatives of family caregivers. Dementia is a diagnosis that not only affects the person diagnosed, but changes the lives of the entire family. At this time, I introduce Mr. Steve Brown Shechter, son-in-law of a participant in the Israel365 Memory Clinic for Holocaust survivors.
Good evening, everyone. Good evening, Rabbi. Grandma came to live with us at 93. She's definitely a Holocaust survivor. She saw Auschwitz, and she was also in a slave labor camp for a while. And when she came to us at 93, she was able to embroider. She was able to read. She was able to, and she also spoke about her experiences in various institutions around Beit Shemesh. Unfortunately, as she grew older, she left us at 103 years old. These became very difficult for her. And Melabev was a mainstay of her, of her day. She used to go there. She participated fully in their programs, and she really was happy to go. And also, even later on, Blimi from Melabev used to come and read to her and talk with her, and they used to have conversations, and it really was an uplifting time for her. And because of this, it definitely not only lengthened her life, but gave her life quality. And therefore, thank you, Rabbi Weiss, and thank you, Melabev, for all the good things you did for my mother-in-law.
Thank you, Steve. I don't think anything needs to be added to these very personal and genuine words. If this were a regular ceremony in typical times, I would now invite Rabbi Tuly Weiss on behalf of Israel365, Mr. Steve Brown Shechter on behalf of the Holocaust survivors and their families, Mr. Jeff Kahn, and Dr. Zeev Friedman, Melabev's CEO, to unveil the plaque. Unfortunately, being in the midst of a COVID pandemic, this is not possible. I'm inviting Mr. Yossi Barnett, Director of the Melabev at Home Services, in charge of the Israel365 Memory Clinic for Holocaust survivors. He will unveil the plaque. The plaque is situated prominently in the entrance to Melabev's headquarters in Jerusalem. Please, Yossi. The plaque reads, "Upon the dedication of Israel365 Memory Clinic for Holocaust survivors, for those who can't remember and those who can't forget." Rabbi Tuly Weiss, we are honored to invite you to speak on behalf of Israel365.
Thank you so much, Yael and Yossi and Jeff and Zeev and Steve. This is really beautiful. I wasn't expecting such a nice program, and of course, the Knesset member Cohen. I'm a grandson of Holocaust survivors, and so for me, I always grew up with Holocaust survivors around, and my grandparents would tell us their stories, and it always just struck very close to home, the Holocaust, the memory of the Holocaust. And it was really when I made Aliyah and moved to Israel just less than 10 years ago. And we moved to a very young community, and everybody was sort of our age and had young kids, but there weren't a lot of elderly people, and there's no Holocaust survivors in our community, in our synagogue. And it made like a really profound impact. I really noticed the absence of Holocaust survivors in my life for the very first time, and it really scared me. It really scared me. It reinforced the notion that the Holocaust is something that the survivors of the Holocaust are less and less every single year. And so when I heard about Melabev for the first time, I was so excited, enthusiastic to learn about the organization. My daughter was preparing for her bat mitzvah and would go to Melabev and volunteer with the elderly and with the Holocaust survivors before her bat mitzvah. And it was such a wonderful program. And the more that I got to know Shoshana here in Beit Shemesh, and Dahlia, Yossi, and the Jerusalem office, and all of the great volunteers at Melabev, I was really, really impressed at how hard they worked to provide dignity, to provide quality of life for those suffering from the terrible disease of Alzheimer's and dementia. And when COVID struck about a year ago already, so we were all scrambling. Each one of us, every one of us, had to figure out how to survive during Corona. And I was talking, and I called Shoshana to say, how's it going? And what are you doing? Are you open? Are you not open? And she said, no, of course we had to close right away. And what about the elderly? What about the Holocaust survivors? And immediately, Melabev did not miss a beat, and they were providing their therapy services in people's homes, and they were delivering food to people in their homes. It was unbelievable. I had the honor to be able to deliver some of those meals, and Israel365 had the great honor to be able to help support that program. Melabev was there. They didn't miss a beat. They didn't miss a day of servicing this important population. Just last week was Holocaust Memorial Day, International Holocaust Memorial Day, and it came out in the news. We had an article on Israel365 News that in the last year, because of Corona, 900 Holocaust survivors lost their lives to COVID in the last year in Israel. And that just, terrified me. 900 survivors in less than a year. That means about 3 Holocaust survivors are dying every single day of COVID. And, with that, and we lost a good friend, Israel365 and Melabev. We lost a good friend, Mark Jacoby, who just on Thursday passed away from COVID. He was 95 years old. He was somebody who we were providing services in his home, and I had the chance, the great honor to be able to spend time with him and his wife and to hear his Holocaust story, to present him with the Israel Bible. I didn't realize this, but he was in the same concentration camp. He was liberated from the very same concentration camp that my grandfather was liberated from. And so, the connection to the Holocaust is very, very real and very, very, very vivid. And so when we have these days of commemorating the Holocaust, I think that to some extent, we're kind of missing the point, because we are not living hundreds of years away from this great tragedy. We are living decades away, which means that there are still in our midst in Israel 200,000 Holocaust survivors who don't need our commemoration. They need our help. It says in Isaiah chapter 40, verse 1, comfort my people Israel. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to comfort the people who need our help, not commemorate. We need to comfort them. And that's what Melabev does. And that's what we've had the privilege of being able to do. Every day that goes by, we lose 3 Holocaust survivors to COVID. That's 3 less people who we can provide comfort to. But on the other hand, every day we have an opportunity to do all that we can to provide the comfort that these precious, precious people need. They've suffered so much, and they're losing their memories, their faculties. They need our help. And so I wanted just to, before I conclude, thank, of course, the staff, the volunteers of Melabev, who do so much great work on a daily basis. But I also wanted to thank the board of Israel365 Charity Fund. And I know that we have some of the board members here who are watching right now live, but that's Mark Singer and Pastor David Swaggerty, Scott Osborne, and Noam Lipschitz, whose guidance and direction and leadership allows us to do what we do. And the biggest thank you doesn't go to me, it doesn't go to our board, but it goes to our donors. And those are, for the most part, Christians who feel so connected to the Jewish people and to the Holocaust that they are standing with the Jewish people in support, in compassion, in comfort. If there were Christian Zionists alive 80 years ago like there are today, there would not have been a Holocaust. And so we are just so grateful for the donors. We have about 500 people who donate every single month, and we transfer that money to Melabev and to other programs that we are connected with. So I just wanted to let all of you know, thank you. Thank you for the great work that you do. You should know how big of an impact it's having on the people of Israel, and especially the Holocaust survivors. So thank you.
Thank you, Rabbi Tuly. In every interaction with you, we know just how generally you care for Holocaust survivors. And for us, it is a great honor that we are partnering with you in this important endeavor. I now invite Dr. Zeev Friedman, Melabev's CEO, to give the closing greetings.
Okay, good evening. I want to tell you I'm very excited, and for me to be the CEO of Melabev, it's a big privilege. It's a holy mission, and to deal every day with the valuable role to repair the world, to bring more light, happiness to the elderly people that we serving them, to bring them meaning, to bring them dignity, to bring them, to honor them. And I want to thank from the bottom of my heart to Rabbi Weiss. You are really something else, really. And it's a big privilege to know you, to meet you, and that you are partner of Melabev and your organization. And I want to thank Zvulun Orlev, the former Minister of Welfare. He is the chairman of Melabev, and Jeff Kahn, the co-chairman, and the entire board of directors, Yael, and the staff of Melabev and the Melabev family. So again, thank you, Rabbi Tuly Weiss and the Friends of Israel365 around the world for your dedication, efforts, and enabling this special Melabev at Home program for Holocaust survivors in Israel, the coping with dementia and Alzheimer. Mrs. Meirav Cohen, the former minister, and now she is the member of the Knesset, already pointed out the devastating effect of the dementia on Holocaust survivors in particular. As a society, we must show our respect and help those who endured the horrors of the Holocaust. Israel365 community exemplifies the remarkable trait. So thank you for the privilege of allowing Melabev to partner with you, not only in this endeavor, but all you did in 2020 to help the seniors in the Bet Shemesh community throughout the coronavirus pandemic. Melabev look forward to a long relationship with Israel365 and Rabbi Tuly Weiss in carrying on your excellent work. In Psalms Tehillim 71 verse 9, we say, "Do not cast me away when I am old. Do not forsake me when my strength is gone." Thank you.
Thank you, Israel365 and Rabbi Tuly Weiss. Thank you to all of you.
The prophet Isaiah says in chapter 40, "Comfort, comfort my people, O Israel." And friends, we have a special opportunity to not only comfort the people of Israel, but to comfort the Holocaust survivors whose health is failing and their needs are increasing. And please, please, I implore you to partner with Israel365 in order to provide comfort to the Holocaust survivors in
Israel today.